Arrival of each child.
Very unique with each one was a good heavens. Here's another tiny little infant. Wonder where they came from. And how quickly your mother just accepted them and loved them and brought them to her, so to speak. And life was difficult for her, I perceived over the years, because there were no, she had to wash all the diapers and cook all the meals and tend all the kids and clean the house and wash my clothes. That's a big chore, 8 children. And when you were born, Jana was 13. So you were all still little kids.
Mm-hmm.
And but you all grew up. And almost in spite of us, Jordan. I don't ever remember losing my patience with any of you. I remember being disappointed and displeased, but I never did get after you very much that I remembered. Huh.
Were there any surprises about parenting for you?
No? Well, I was surprised at how good it was, frankly. No. All of you were good. All of you were pleasant and fun and etc.
How did you...
I can't, I'm not being much help to you.
That's fine. Not all of... These are just prompts, so not all of them are going to work out. Do you remember how you chose the names?
Yes. Brooks was named after my cousin Brooks Lee, who was killed during the war. He made a deep impression on me. As he was 3 or 4 years older than me, this Brooks Lee. And he was such a quiet, friendly, polite young man. And I was envious of him because he was very well respected. Anyway, when he was killed, I thought, if I can someday, I'd like to name one of my children Brooks, one of my boys. And Jana, there was one of my mother's acquaintances was a woman named Janie Blair. Her husband was an SOB. He was a lawyer here in town. She was Janie Pace, her married name. And my mother always thought that she was a very dignified, charming person. And so I had talked about that early on. And but somehow Janie didn't fit, but we just decided to use Jana, so we did. And Colin was way early in World War II, there was a bomber pilot somewhere who sunk a battleship by dropping a bomb on it out of a bomber way high. His name was Colin Kelly, and I thought that was a very nice name for a young man. So we chose Colin. Should have given him a middle name, but we never did. We said, he didn't need any other names, that's enough. And afterwards he told us he always wished he had a middle name. We offered to do that for him. He said, no, I'm stuck with, I'm used to it, it's all right. And Nona Kay, I think we told you about that. I don't remember why we... Oh, it was because Leona had been called Nona for a while by some of her relatives. Instead of Leona, she became Nona. and I guess the K was because of my first name. Anyway, and Elaine was Leona's brother. Cloyd had been engaged to a girl named Elaine something or other from down to Tucson that he'd met when he was going to school down there. And while he was gone on a mission, she got married. And so we thought that was a very charming name, and so we used that with our daughter Elaine. And then Cloyd married her sister. So we apologized to all of them about that, and they said, don't worry about it. Their paths will never cross, and they never have. And who's next? Leela?
Yep.
And your mother had a hard time with this. I had always liked my mother's first name, Leela Lee. And so I suggested Leela, and she resisted, and we couldn't think of a better name, so finally we named her Leela. And then Marcy, there was a girl, I can't remember who she was, that we knew, whose name was Marcy. And I can't remember anything about her, but we both thought that was a very beautiful, melodic name, so that's what we used on Marcy. And your name, there was a boy from Safford named Jordan Naylor. I can't remember anything about him, except we thought that was a nice name. And so when you came along, not because of him, but because he had that name, and we decided, well, as good as any, let's name him Jordan. So we did.
Since then, I have had an entire semester of ASU and moved home and got a boyfriend. Maybe I should do that.
All right.
You can put that on when you get a synopsis.
What did you most like to do together as a family?
So my last entry is a paragraph about everything I have done.
Eat dinner.
July.
We thoroughly enjoyed sitting around the dinner table and visiting. We never did talk about other people, but we would talk about what problems had come up. I remember somebody would say, why do you think they got into that problem? And somebody would say, well, I think what happened is that they got to worrying about this or that, you know. And then we'd talk more about that, and we had a lot of enjoyable times around the dinner table.
When I watch the kids do what
Very
they
interesting time.
do, they got
And what else did we do?
about what? Put their thumbs around.
One of the closest things we ever did is that time we went to the milk ranch, all of us. I can't remember whether you were even born yet. And we had an old,
It's when you get in a bottle.
we'd taken down the garage down at Norton's Corner and had hauled it up there a piece at a time, and we had the floor was built and the walls were up, but it didn't have a ceiling on it, roof. And so we got there early enough to put the joists in place and nail the ceiling on it. And so we were all sleeping under this, in this open air building. And during the night it rained very, very hard. And anybody who was out near the edge was getting wet. So we all woke up and moved our beds to the middle of the floor and laid there listening to that rain. And when the rain stopped, Boulder Creek was running. And there were a lot of big boulders in it. And so we laid there and listened to that creek run. And I remember feeling very close to my family there. Every one of them were there. I can't remember whether you were even born yet or not. There was the remains of very few remains of a little house. It was called the Milk Ranch because there was a woman lived there and her husband died and she just stayed there. And she had a milk cow that she'd turn out to graze, and it would come in, and she'd milk it in the morning before and she had milk there. And that was the main trail from Phoenix to Prescott. Went up through Crown King and down the top of the Bradshaw Mountains to Prescott. And so lots of people traveled that trail. And she would invite any of them to come in and have a drink of milk with her. That's why it's called the Milk Ranch. I could have been very happy. I always kind of regretted the fact that we sold that ranch, because it was there were a lot of very unique things about it, and it was paid for by then. I borrowed money from the Valley National Bank. Their loan officer was a guy named Jesse James, and he and I got to be quite good friends over the years, because every year I'd borrow the money to operate on, and then when we sold the cattle, I'd pay him back, and we gradually paid that down and had it completely paid for by the time we sold out and moved.
What did you do most often as a family, whether or not you liked it or not?
You know, I can't remember anything most often. We did all kinds of things. We had a garden in the backyard up there, and I can't zero in on anything,
all right.
Jordan. We did lots of things.
All right. Do you recall any memories of being flooded with a sense of love for your young children?
Oh yeah, constantly. They were, next to my wife, they were the center of my life. I'd see each one of them, and I'd be filled with this very warm feeling. That's part of me. I've been blessed to be part of the world of this little child that's here in our home now. and that was a very warm, personal thing. It's probably selfish on my part. At this point, I don't care if it was or not. It was still there, and it was good. And I would see children, other people's children, who'd get into trouble with the law, or who would be drinking or whatever, and I was very thankful to my Father in heaven that my children were good, decent, nice people. I didn't ever have to worry about any of them in that way.
What chores did you give them as they were young, and then when they were a teenager?
I remember when Brooks and Colin were old enough, we lived down at Norton's Corner, and we had a milk cow, and I bought a milking machine because Brooks couldn't milk the cow. And so they'd milk the cow, and we'd sell milk, 25 cents a gallon or something like that. We had a refrigerator out on the back porch of somewhere, and we'd strain the milk and run it through a pasteurizer that we had, which kept the temperature up just below boiling for so many minutes. And you know, there was a danger then of what was called undulant fever, or Bang's disease, because if cows carried that, and you could get it by drinking their milk. And anyway, we had big gallon glass jugs with a metal lid, and whoever came to buy milk would put their quarter in the thing and write their name down, take the milk, and I don't remember what we did with that cow. I guess when we moved back to town, we couldn't take her with us, could we? And we built we built an extra room on the back corner of the lot, and I'd forgotten one of the kids was going to sleep out there, and they slept there one night, and it was too lonely. They came back in and slept in the house with all the rest of us. And I remember once Brooks got mad at something, and so he left and didn't come back. And Mom and I talked about it, and we said, well, he'll come back after a while. The next morning I was up early, and I was standing out on the back porch. There was a cotton field just back of us there. And I glanced over there as he stood up in that cotton field. He had slept in that cotton field all night, I guess. Anyway, he didn't say a word. He came walking back into the house, and we treated it like nothing had happened. But he looked so sheepish when he...
What was some helpful parenting advice that you got?
That we got?
Yeah.
I don't remember if anybody gave us any. We got parenting advice by watching other parents older than us, you know. I remember my mother always treated all of us very warmly, and I wanted to continue that. And I think what it came down to is your mother and I talked about it way early, and we decided what we need to do is treat all of you with great respect. I remember thinking to myself, if I pull a gun out and point it at you and say, I'm going to shoot you, you're going to do one of two things. You're either going to attack me or you're going to run. And that's instinctive. You don't have any choice. You'll do one or the other, or maybe a combination of them. And so I need to not attack any of my children. I need to not ever threaten them in any way. And because they will do one of two things, either one of which is not smart. And so we made our minds up early that we were not ever going to treat you with disrespect. And I don't know if we succeeded, but that was our goal.
Tell me about some of the vacations you went on.
I remember we had 2 or 3 of these one-row cotton pickers. And at the end of one summer, we needed to buy a bunch more spindles. And there was a place in California where you could get them much cheaper than we could buy them there in Gilbert area. So we loaded up. I remember Leela went with us. She's probably the youngest one. We called her the itty-bitty tiger kitty or something. I better go answer that.
We got an answerer.
Dina, will you answer that?
Vacations. You were going to California, and Leila was along for the ride to get some spindles.
I think I'm mixing 2 vacations up. Later on, we went to took the whole family. We had a big Buick, 8-passenger Buick station wagon. The back seat faced rear. All the rest of them faced forward. Anyway, that's when Leela went with us, and
Marcy was with us too,
oh, was she?
because she called the, what is the thing that you put your stuff in? She called it a divinity case. And it was what?
Vanity.
Vanity. She called it a divinity. On that same trip, we were at the beach, and she was about 5. And she was on the beach playing, and she met a friend, and she brought him home and introduced him to us as Cancer.
Yeah.
I got to put the makeup on.
This is my friend Cancer, she said.
I'll be back.
I'd forgotten that. We said to the boy, "What's your name?" And he said, "Spencer." But Marcy still called him Cancer. And we crossed through the Sierra Nevada mountains somewhere, and there was snow along the edge of the road. So we stopped, and all the kids played in the snow, but not for very long, because it was cold. I think we stayed at Uncle Ad's place in Merced.
No.
That sounds like that was wrong.
I don't know. Did we go to the beach that time, or was it a different time?
I can't remember. I know we went to San Diego at one vacation, and we're in the harbor when we saw the old APA 213 HS, HM, whatever it was, Montrose.
Well, you have to explain that.
I already did earlier.
How about holidays? Are there any memorable holidays with the kids?
Not really. They were all memorable. I remember Christmas as a little boy. The thing I looked forward to the most about Christmas is that all of us got an orange for Christmas. They were too expensive to just buy and eat earlier than that in our lives, but and my most memorable Christmas is when my mother finally consented to let me have a .22, and I told you about the Beep Sight single shot .22. She was afraid I was going to shoot somebody.
What were the most difficult issues of early childhood as a parent?
I'll be very candid about this. I don't remember any most difficult issues.
He didn't do any parenting.
That's why there weren't any difficult issues. Will that be recorded, Jordan, that voice from the deep, dim, and distant past?
Yes.
He was gone to the farm or the ranch all day and church business all night. And on Sunday.
Tell me more about the meal times. Part of what I'm curious about is all the additional people around the table in addition to family.
Well, at one time we had our 8, and us 2 made 10, and Tom and Sylvia. Who was the girl that lived with us? Sophie. And so there were 12 people at the dinner table, every meal. There was 12 of us. We had that great big round table wherever it went. And,
Leela has it.
oh, that's right. We shipped it to Leela.
Well, one thing we did at lunchtime was the high school kids, I'm not ready. High school kids came home from lunch, and we watched One Life to Live and General Hospital.
Do you recall the circumstances around different kids living with us?
Well, Mom and I would have to talk that through. Betty Angle came and lived with us because her mother was a widow and in our ward, and she just needed a better home.
How long did she stay with you?
Oh, a year or two.
Well, Ken, don't you remember?
No.
My mother had a colostomy bag.
Oh, yeah.
And Betty found out that she had two, and she ran away. And the missionaries called us from Phoenix because she'd been in touch with them. So we brought her to our house.
And you see, I'd forgotten all of that.
Okay. We'll come back to that when she's in the chair next to you. Let's see. Tell the time when you were most worried or frightened as a parent.
When I drove home one evening just before sundown, and Nona came running out of the house and said, "Jana ran over Jordan on his bicycle." And I could see you flattened out on the ground with her car running over you. And I jumped back in my truck and went to Chandler, where she had taken you. And she hadn't run over you, she just bumped you with the front fender and tipped you over and bumped your head on the floor, on the pavement or something. But that I was petrified.
We'll pause until Mom gets done putting on her makeup.
Are we there yet?
We'll get there when we get there. So I was curious about the different kids who stayed with the family and what the circumstances were.
Well, did you record what we said about Betty? Was she the first one?
I think so.
He was the bishop. And you didn't record that part, did you?
Yeah, but away from the back of the house.
Well, oh, excuse me. You recorded.
We'll edit that out.
But that was good, sort of. She was living with her mother, who was a widow, and the mother had something wrong with her bowels, and she had a colostomy bag. I guess she'd had them cut off. And when Betty was a teenager, 17, she found out that she had the same problem and had to wear a colostomy bag. And she was so devastated that she ran away. And then we got a call, not very long after, a day or two, from the missionaries in Phoenix. And they had her with them, and I guess she told them to call us. So I don't know how she got there. Did we go get her? I don't remember.
I don't remember.
But she came and stayed with us for a period of time and got used to the idea of the bag and became reconciled to it. I don't know how long she stayed with us, but she did. She finally went back to her mother's house, didn't she?
I think so.
The next person who stayed with us was probably Doris, while you were the bishop still. And she was about the same age as Betty, I guess. But her mother and dad had separated and were not able to parent her. So she lived with her grandmother. And the grandmother, even then, was old. And the generation gap was too huge. And Doris had a hard time living with her grandmother. So we asked the grandmother and her if it was okay for her to come and stay with us for a while. And it was, and so she did. And it seems like she was with us for a couple of years, wasn't she?
I can't remember. I think it was only 1 year because Greg came.
Okay, so she stayed with us, and that was really good for us as parents because we had a teenager older than our own children, and we saw what teenagers were like. So that it was easier to
not panic.
when our own came along. We were teenagers. But
She was how old?
she must have been 16 or 17. And so then Greg Smith was having trouble at home. They lived in Virginia?
Chevy Chase.
Chevy Chase. His dad was, at that time, was he the state president?
Mm-hmm.
And his dad was a secretary to President Benson in the agriculture department. And it was a hard time for Greg because his father was so demanding and unbending. And Greg told us that his father strapped him with his belt. And I heard you say, if you're attacked, you either attack back or you run. And so when Jessica called us, we gave him the chance to run, I guess.
And he did.
So he came and stayed with us, I think it was his junior year in high school. And so because Doris was about the same age, we thought, we probably shouldn't do this. So we found another place for Doris to live, which I think was hard on her, except it was a good family and she did fine. Later on, Betty, with the colostomy bag, came to EA to school, and she was so proud of herself. She said, I can wear a sheath dress with this thing and I'm fine. And she got married, had 4 kids.
They were nice kids and smart.
And then she divorced the guy, married a guy named Smith, who wanted to have a polygamous situation. And she said no way, and so she divorced him. And then became a nurse and raised her kids. Kids turned out really good. But anyway, so Doris went to live with the Crandalls. And then what? What happened to her? Did she come back after Greg left?
Doris? I don't
She
think
was well associated with us all the time.
I don't think so. I think she didn't come back and live with us. We just treated her like she was one of our children.
And how did she get to Utah? Why did she get to Utah? I can't remember all that, but in Utah she met Jay Brown and they came down here and got married. Grandpa Udall married him in our ward building.
Did I do that?
No, the other grandpa, your dad. Your dad.
Oh, he did that as a judge?
Yeah. And we had a reception for her and everything. So she then went to Utah. And then after those, Doris and Betty and Greg, was Bobby the next one? Bobby Twining, was that her name?
I think so.
And I can't remember why she came.
I do. Her father was looking at her.
Well, no, that was Joellen Bigelow.
Oh, that's right. Who was Bobby Twining?
I can't
She was
remember.
just a girl who needed a home, and we let her live with us for a while. I can't remember why.
I can't remember why she came. But in later years, like as recently as a couple of years ago, we ran into her in Mesa. She was a dance instructor, doing well. We met her at a high school function. So that was good.
Anyway, this Jo Ellen, she went to her bishop and told him she was having problems with her dad coming and peeking in the shower when she was showering. And the dad denied it, and the bishop believed him. And so somebody said, you can go talk to your stake president if you want to. So she did. And I believed her. And I told the bishop, I think this girl is telling the truth and we need to not take any chances. The bishop was pretty unhappy, and I can't even remember who the bishop was. Anyway, not too long after that, the dad confessed to somebody that he'd been...
But that was after she had been with us for a few weeks.
Yeah.
Stayed with us for a few weeks, and she was such a beautiful girl, so pretty. But she could turn around backwards, and when she turned around, she looked like a chimpanzee. It was the funniest thing you ever saw. She could transform her face into an ape, and she was so pretty. It was so funny. But,
How old was she?
well, she was a late teenager, and she was with us in the summer. And every day when she'd get up, she'd say, okay, what are we going to do today? So we refinished a table and painted the walls, and
practiced our monkey faces.
she kept us hopping. But it was fun to have all those people there because it made a happy situation. The older kids related to them, and it was good.
So who else did we have?
So by that time when Joellen came, were the older kids her same age or were they still younger?
Yeah, they're about the same age, it seems like. And I don't know, but pretty soon she was in touch with an aunt that lived in Benson or somewhere, and she went to live with her. I don't think she went back home.
So she just stayed for the summer, or did she stay part of the school year?
No school year, just part of the summer, I think. And then she got established before the school year started the next fall. So those didn't stay very long. And then about that time,
So how long did Greg stay? Just the 1 year?
1 year.
One school year.
And then he went back to Chevy Chase?
Mm-hmm. Finished his senior year there. I don't know what happened there, but a few months ago, he wrote us a letter, or we saw him, and he said he still had negative feelings about himself there. He thought he was a bad influence on our kids, and that we thought he was terrible, but we didn't. We reassured him that he was an okay person and we loved him. Anyway, so then was about the time that the Lamanite program came along, and Tom came. Tom came when he was 15 or 16.
Yeah.
So was he there with all those other people, or
I don't remember.
I don't know the time frame. And he was with us 4 years or so.
5.
Well, 5. The 5th year was after he graduated and stayed with us before he went in the service. There's Emily. So anyway, after he finished high school, we thought we had done our part with the Lamanite program, you know. But one weekend, and I think this was.
Where were we going?
Huh?
Where were we going that weekend?
We had gone to chaperone the young adults at a weekend away up to the camp or somewhere.
Somewhere like that.
While we were gone, the placement people called, and Nona and Elaine answered the phone, and they said, "We have a little girl here who we don't have a home for, and we think we can have a home by Monday. Can you take her for the weekend?" And they said, "Sure." So they went and got her.
They were old enough to drive?
Yeah, they were, what, junior and senior in high school, I guess, something like that. So by the time we came home, they had become the mothers, and she had become their child. They wouldn't let her go. They couldn't stand it. And so I was thinking of that when you take a Lamanite child, it's yours forever. And it was a long time, from 8 years to however long she was going to be. And it just seemed overwhelming. But then I thought, you could do anything one day at a time.
Yeah.
One day was easy.
Okay.
That worked out just fine.
And for a long time, when she would address her, she'd call her M.O.M.
So with other kids, it was a short term, a few months or a year,
Mm-hmm.
so it didn't seem overwhelming.
Right.
What about Tom? Because he was there 4 or 5 years.
You know, it never was overwhelming.
Yeah, he was basically a good boy.
It was all fine. And Sophie was fine. And so that was the year that Tom had just graduated from high school. And so end of the summer, Sophie came, and he came back because he was waiting to go into the service. So that's when we had both of them there. Is that all the kids we had?
Hello, Emily.
I think I just hung up. I don't remember any.
That's probably all in Gilbert. What about over here in Thatcher?
Oh,
We had Tim over here.
a little while. Tim was a friend of Lida's when she was in college. They played in the band together. I think he played the flute. And so we knew him in that context. We didn't find out till later that he was gay. And it was after Leela had left home, gone to ASU. One day we were up in Yellowfront, and Tim was clerking there. And we saw him and went over to say hello. And he said, "I need to talk to you." So that night or soon after, he came to our house. And it was the strangest thing because he was sitting on the couch and he looked so dark that it was strange. We wondered if he had a skin disease or something. And he told us that he was gay, was living with a guy, and he wanted to change. Could he come and live with us? So we said, okay.
So that's when the in-house contact began.
And so that's when I called poison control to see if it was okay to have that person in the house with us. But he said, okay, I'll come in the morning. I'll come in the morning. But he didn't come. We knew where he was staying, so we went there. And he and the other guy were there, and they were arguing. The other guy had a pair of scissors. He was so angry that Tim was going to leave. And so I stayed out and talked with Tim while you went in the other room with the guy with the scissors. Is that how it was?
That's right. I was bigger than him.
So anyway, it was a strange confrontation. He came and stayed with us. But the guy wouldn't leave him alone. And I guess Leela and Marcy were still here. Or was it Marcy and Sophie and Sylvia that were upstairs?
I can't remember.
There were some girls upstairs, and he was staying in the downstairs bedroom. You had
This
already...
is after I left for college.
Yeah, because Joellen came before Tim.
Or something.
Or something. And so, but anyway, so the guy wouldn't leave him alone. And one night, while we were asleep, the girls told us that Tim had come in, and the other guy tried to get in and got in. And they were chasing each other around the living room. So the girls called the police. And they came and took the guy away, I guess. We were still asleep. No. We're good sleepers. But I guess Tim just couldn't change. At one time, he said, "I don't have any place to leave my piano," so he left his piano with us for quite a while, didn't he?
I think so. I can't remember all those details.
So how long was he there?
Just a few weeks.
When was Sylvia there?
Well, Sophie was there. Both those girls were there. Was Sylvia staying with Clyde and Vita May or somebody else?
I can't remember.
Anyway, at that time, somewhere along in there, May called in great distress because the men on the reservation had dragged her out in the snow and raped her. And there was nothing the police would do about it. She was afraid. So we got her a place and had her moved down here into an apartment. But I don't think the girls moved in with her, unless Judy or Julie did. And Sophie and Sylvia stayed with us. It's all vague, forgotten it all. But Joellen came when she was 15, and you were just about to go on your mission. So she was in jail in Holbrook, and we heard about it and asked if it would be okay, would it be helpful if she left Holbrook and came down here and lived with us. Well, the court agreed And
Court
so
was
did
an old classmate of mine from law school, old Judge Shelley.
And so we went and got her. And there was school the next day, and unbelievably, she was a magnet to the partiers and the.
Drug users.
She connected with them first day, I
Instantly,
guess.
we discovered a subculture that we did not know existed here. She didn't last long with us, what, 3 or 4 months?
And she went to church with us, but she didn't dress well. She just, like if she had a dress that had a belt, she'd leave the belt off and just go along. She must have been high the whole time she was with us. We didn't know it. And so we became acquainted with the partiers and the what are the people that she had to report to?
Probation officer.
Probation officer, the policeman. We knew the names of the partiers. And eventually we decided that we weren't helping her, we were just aiding. What do you call it? Enabling her. So we told her we had to quit, and she left and went to prison. But I think the thing that made us make the decision was that you had come home one day and heard her talking on the phone using foul language and strange topics and stuff like that. I think you told us that. And we decided that was not a wholesome thing for you to be ready for a mission with this girl in the house. So away she went.
When we loaded her up with all of her stuff, and we got in the car, and she said, "Where are we going?" And we said, "Joellen, we're just not going to be able to continue like this. We've called the probation officer, and they're ready to take you back to Holbrook, Snowflake, wherever she was living." And we went to a stop sign, and she got out.
Ran up through the field.
Started to run, and I tried to catch her, and I couldn't. She was faster than me. So I said to her, "Joellen, I'm not going to be able to catch you. Maybe I don't even want to, but I can keep you in sight, and we'll get the police officers here, and somebody will be able to catch you. You just will come peacefully." So she shrugged and came, and
But it didn't hurt our relationship with her. We maintained contact over the years, and it's too bad.
What were the circumstances around Sophie leaving? She didn't finish high school here, right?
She went to a junior year here, and at the end of that year, the Lamanite program people told us that there had been trouble on the reservation because of some of the things that Sophie had said.
mainly, she had said to her mother, "That's not the way you dogs do it." And
Just things like that.
somebody learned about that. And so there was, somebody had sued the church over alienation of affection. And the church became frightened of that, and so she had to go somewhere else. And so her senior year, she went somewhere in California and was doing well. She got a patriarchal blessing. She was just glowing about it. But when she graduated from high school, she started drinking.
No, I don't know what she did then.
I don't know, but sometime along the line she did.
Her mother had moved to Tucson and had a job, and so the girls gradually all, well, let's see, went to Tucson, but then they were all in Salt Lake area. While we were on our mission, they were in the Salt Lake area. But we tried to keep in touch with her. I didn't do well enough while she was the senior, while we still had the attachment. I didn't do well to keep in touch. And after that, when we did, she didn't answer. And finally, one of the girls wrote and said, "We just don't believe the way you do anymore." No, that was it. But later on, when she was living in Tucson. As we went to Tucson for different things, we'd go and contact her and have lunch or visit with her for a few minutes and things like that. But when her mother died in 1995,
Something.
Sophie started to drink. And she just drank herself to death in the next 10 years. Too bad.
What are some additional family memories that you guys like to revisit or think about?
Really good. We tried to go horseback riding one time on the ranch up above Phoenix. Had horses for everybody. One time in the years that we owned the ranch. Funny. We never did that on the Clifton Rency one. The trouble is that teenagers have their own agenda, things to do, schedules to meet. So
All right.
what I don't understand is how I was able to go so many times with you up at the Phoenix Ranch. It seems like many times. What'd the kids do? You just leave them home to sleep in bed?
I don't remember.
Guess they're old enough to get their own breakfast. And that was it.
All right, I have a few more questions just for Dad. So,
Okay.
what gives you special pleasure in your relationship with your adult children?
Their adultness. That they're all grown up. They have self-respect. They have a dignity about them that's not imposed. And they're decent, good, honorable citizens. I think I told you the conversation I overheard with my dad once
Yeah.
about he'd give everything he owned by the time I was 11 if they just all stayed out of jail. And I never did worry about that. You were all excellent children, successful, good students, good family members, had a good spouse. And I just didn't worry about you. Never did. Well, I may have worried about one or two of you a little bit.
We prayed for Jana and her headaches a lot. We prayed for Brooks the times he was out of a job so many times. And Don when he was. That's about it.
What would you like your children to know about you?
Without bragging, what I would like them to know is that they have my absolute, unqualified love and support. I would give my life for any one of them if it made sense. And each one of them, in turn, are a source of great personal pride, not in a pride of the world kind of a thing, but I'm so grateful to them that they're like they are, and that I don't have to worry about them. They can run their own lives, make their own decisions, and fit in and vote for the right candidate for president, and all that kind of good stuff. So what do I want my children to know? That I love them and I'm proud of them, and keep on. Church is true.
What are your 3 keys you want them to know?
Church is true. God has been good to us, and the best is yet to come. Those are the keys of my life. And I'm getting closer to the best is yet to come part all the time now. And that doesn't worry me in the least yet.